Good morning from Boeing offices in Dubai for the Middle East, Africa and Turkey. Very pleased to have with us the president of Boeing Middle East, Africa and Turkey, Mr. Kuljit Ghata-Aura. Thank you very much for having us. Sustainable aviation is something very new for the Middle East. We do know that Boeing is very active in this regard globally and regionally. Would you please tell us more about your milestones in the MENA region in this regard?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think we need to, let's start from the beginning. I mean, if you really look at the challenge facing aviation, it's really significant. So if you look at the footprint or the carbon footprint that's made up of that aviation makes up, it's actually relatively low. If you think about it, it's 2%, and really as even in the transport sector, it's only 12%. But the fact is that if you look at the projections over the next 20 years for how many aircraft are going to be in the air, how many people are going to be traveling, it's clear that if we don't take steps to address this issue right now, we're going to be behind. And as you know, the industry committed to a net zero by 2050. We are fully behind that, supportive of all the industry efforts through IATA and similar organisations and with our customers to do so. And also I think that it's a good thing to recall that the UAE as a country was the first country in the MENA region to commit to net zero by 2050. So the point being that whilst if you look at it purely in terms of the numbers right now, you'd say, well, why are you so worried about it? The fact is that we're going to see 10 billion people traveling by 2050. We're going to see...
Especially after the big deal in Saudi yesterday. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and India. And
indeed, and India as well.
So there's just going to be a significant number of people traveling. I was always amazed at the statistic that says that 4 out of 5 people have not ever flown. So you're looking at you want to give the opportunity to people to travel. Of course, the pandemic showed us that air freight was crucial in terms of keeping people supplied. So I just wanted to make this point early on before I get into the detail, because it's really important to frame the issue, and particularly for this region where, if you look at the UAE, 1 in 10 jobs are aviation related. I think something like 13% of the GDP,
and it is growing.
And it's growing, and we fully expect it to grow. So I think that's a really important aspect of looking at it, particularly through the lens of this region and this country. But in terms of what we do, well, I think that at Boeing we've really got 4 main pillars for the sustainability strategy, and each of them is extremely important. So one is around fleet renewal. So you mentioned the Saudi deal, 787, the Air India deal, the 787,
and the 777-9,
and the 777-9 will be coming. So every time we bring out a new airplane model, this is producing something like 15 to 25% less emissions than the previous version. So fleet renewal is, I think, a really important aspect of the strategy.
Yeah. So that's one.
That's one. The second one is around operational efficiency, because you'll have seen from the last 747 that we delivered, think about how many years that plane has been in service. Think about how long the plane that we've delivered is going to continue into service. So once you bring out an airplane model, they're in the air for a long time. So we're still going to have a number of the older aircraft in the air. And so what you've got to be able to do with those is to deploy digital products that help operators save fuel, help them fly more efficiently to save fuel, and generally improve their operational performance in all aspects of aviation. And we've calculated, well, actually not we, but third parties have calculated that when those digital products are deployed on older airframes, that gets another 10% of savings. And as I said, all of this matters, right? All of these percentages are important in the overall picture. And then the third aspect and I think the most important one right now is around sustainable aviation fuel. We, since 2008, have been absolute pioneers in this area. We have been part of the working with other OEMs and regulators to get that certified. So as you know, currently the blend is it has to be 50% of the overall. That's what's
for
certified.
Safety.
Yeah, that's what
For safety purposes.
that's what's certified at the moment by the regulatory authorities. What we have said in our sustainability report that we released in 2021 was that by 2030 we will only deliver aircraft that are capable of flying 100% certified on SAF.
Yeah.
And so we made that undertaking to make the planes SAF capable on that level. And I mean, SAF is we think both near term and long term the quickest way to reduce emissions, because over the life cycle of that fuel, you're reducing carbon output by 80%, and there's a potential for it to go up to 100%.
But the production with SAF is basically the issue with SAF production and implementation. The usage, especially in the MENA region, it remains low. How can we elevate that and increase that?
So you're right. I mean, I think we've calculated that SAF production is going to need to increase by something like 750 to 1,000 times to get to the levels that we need. So how does that happen? Well, it happens
in the region.
Well, I think worldwide.
Especially in the region, the percentage is much less than the global percentage.
But I think that you've got to look at some of the moves that regional players are making in this space. So look at the UAE. Look at the investment through Masdar in renewable energy. Look at the commitment to green hydrogen. Look at solar. I mean, you can't fail to have noticed that there's been a huge investment by the UAE government in this area for many, many years.
Do you think there will be anything soon for SAF?
Well, we were part of the SAF roadmap that was led by the Ministry of Energy, and we were actually the only aircraft OEM on that grouping. And for one, it was really encouraging because it actually showed that a path for the UAE to really develop this industry here in terms of SAF production to the extent that it becomes an exporter of SAF. And that's really important because obviously you want it for your own.
It's business. There is a high need across the region to start with.
And also look, you've got none of this happens without the existing oil producers like ADNOC and others, and of course the infrastructure is here, the political will is here. Look at the commitment from the UAE to host the COP 28, and so you know it's all there. And I think with the roadmap we saw that it actually was a very detailed study in terms of what the feedstocks available here are, and of course the big proportion of that was around power to liquid. So really hydrogen, using green hydrogen to produce sustainable aviation fuel, which of course is the cleanest version of that fuel.
When do you project basically SAF to be a majority?
I think that we would have to look back at the roadmap, and of course there are many, many variables within that. You know, even the roadmap when it looks at SAF production, I think it looked at and again we would need to check this, but I think that the 2030, 2035 time frame to start.
That's the global one. But
no, I believe that was also
in the MENA region as well.
We would have to.
Don't you think that we can push further for shorter?
But don't forget, I mean, these are targets that you have to have a target. As I said. To enable production, it's not just governments. It's every part of that ecosystem's got to come together. Regulators have got to come together. This fuel's got to get certified. So the point being that, of course, you would want to do it earlier, but I think that you've also got to be realistic in terms of transitions, and you've also got to look at how nation states allocate resources in that way. But look, clearly there's a huge commitment to aviation in this country. There always has been, and I think it's just very encouraging that the roadmap was there. That I think gave a very clear path to the UAE becoming, creating an industry that could potentially employ 1 million people.
Yeah, so I can see the Boeing's commitment to SAF big time.
100%.
In the MENA region,
we buy it
globally.
ourselves. We actually purchase SAF ourselves to power our own operations in our facilities.
What are the challenges, the primary challenges of SAF? Of
scale. It's purely about scale. It's about getting all of the right people together to create the environment where it's affordable.
Yeah, many people say that the tickets, the airfare will be higher with SAF, and not many people would be willing to pay for that. Well, how do you see that?
Look, I think that what prices of tickets are that's affected by lots and lots of different factors.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult to just split out and say, oh, well, SAF is responsible for that. Operators in a geopolitical environment are affected by all sorts of different pressures. So my answer to you on that would be that I think that if you're looking purely at the SAF piece, clearly everybody understands that there's got to be the right level of incentives, the right level of input by government to encourage SAF production and to make it so that it is affordable for operators.
Do you foresee policies to mandate SAF in the MENA region, starting by UAE, such as taxes and something similar like that?
Honestly, that's a matter really that the UAE is going to have to work out how to do that. But if you look at other ways that it's been done in other places, I think that there's always there is a combination of incentives, and I think that's really, really important because if it's just going to be mandated, I think that leads to a different type of behaviour. But once you're incentivized to do it, so look at California, for example. I think that the mix would have to be there to create a economic environment to enable affordability and scale, because people have got to want to get into the industry. We've been talking to a lot of banks, for example, around financing, and of course, there is a will from everybody to recognising the overall environmental impact to put in place the right policies and procedures to make this work.
So you're developing your partnerships across the board.
We are.
With the government and across the region.
Absolutely.
What about the new types? There will be a big deal, and not a big, but just the first deal in terms of electric planes, albeit small ones, short range, but something to start with for the cargo industry, and also hydrogen. We're hearing a lot. So where do you position yourself for the MENA region?
Well,
what is the MENA region ready to embrace?
Sure, absolutely. Look, I'm glad you asked that, because when I mentioned initially that we had 4 limbs to the strategy, I got to SAF and we had the long discussion, but the fourth is actually about future technologies. So, and one of that is electric. So I think you rightly identified the fact that it's unlikely, given electric power at the moment, that electricity could power the kind of large mass transit aircraft that we're talking about, but certainly in the area of urban air mobility. So in that situation, we've actually got a joint venture ourselves, a company called Whisk, which is creating has manufactured a 6th generation autonomous eVTOL, and this is a really, I went out to see it in Southern California. It sort of takes off like a helicopter, flies like a fixed wing, and the really cool part is it stops in midair, turns around and comes back. And that is all electric, so obviously highly sustainable. And it's the concept there is a urban air mobility vehicle. We want to get that to certification, because I think our view is that for that urban air mobility market to be scalable, it's got to be autonomous.
Yes.
Because I think our view is that the future is that if something's in the air, if it doesn't have feathers and wings, it's going to be regulated.
Yes.
And certainly at Boeing, our view is that something like an urban air vehicle, mobility vehicle, should be regulated from a safety perspective, the same as the commercial aircraft.
Indeed.
And so think about the lack of and the shortage of pilots, even for commercial operations. So if you're really going to proliferate and that urban air market's going to become a lot bigger, it has to be autonomous. So that's why we're looking at the autonomous angle.
Yeah.
But so electric is definitely important for that segment.
Yeah. Hydrogen?
Hydrogen. We've been looking at hydrogen for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, we've had about
when do you see it operational?
So I think that what we see is that unlikely to impact the kind of mass transit, just in terms of how you have to store the fuel. And I'll give you an example. We're working with NASA on a cryogenic fuel tank to store hydrogen for space operations. The issue with it, the amount of fuel, hydrogen fuel that you would need to say power a 737, once you've found a way to put that into the air, I don't know whether there'd be any space for the passengers.
Yeah.
So I think that in a way that encapsulates the challenge.
Yeah.
And also don't forget that what you're going to have to do to bring hydrogen into the existing infrastructure, you're going to have to change it hugely. It's going to, the carbon footprint and just bringing hydrogen into this industry is probably going to outweigh the benefits. Yeah. And we, at Farnborough Air Show, we actually piloted a demo called Cascade.
Yes, we were there.
Yeah, so you saw it.
Yes.
And so the interesting thing about Cascade is that it actually looks at the overall carbon footprint of a route, as you'd have seen, but based on the fuel. And what it factors into is the fact that, okay, you can say that I want to fly this route with hydrogen, but it also factors into that how impactful just doing that is in terms of the overall carbon footprint. So, which is why we always go back to SAF as the obvious immediate drop-in solution.
The new planes, starting by 777-9, delayed, as you know, of COVID and other factors. When are Emirates and Lufthansa are the launch customers?
Sure.
When are we going to see them operational?
Well, we came out with a statement that said that the first delivery would be in 2025.
Yeah,
and
that's for Lufthansa.
It was for Emirates.
For Emirates,
yeah. And so there's nothing that I'm aware of that changes that.
Okay. Beyond 777-9, any new deal, any new aircraft?
Well, look, I mean, the freighters. And so,
in particular, that's my question.
Look, the 777 freighter is, a product that you'd have seen that Qatar made a very large order for that freighter. And again, you talked about freight operations earlier. Obviously, the newer aircraft are producing something, on that model, something like 17% emissions.
Yeah, let's jump into defense a bit.
Sure.
That's a very important sector for Boeing, as we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you know, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the President of UAE, has declared 2023 as the year of sustainability. Yeah. And he's also the Commander-in-Chief of the UAE Armed Forces. And we saw IDEX and all that. Where is defense? Where is the defense sector, basically? In terms of sustainability?
I think it's really important on the SAF story. So if you think about it, if governments can buy SAF and buy it at scale, what that's going to do for the industry. So governments can play a really, really important role on the defence side, for sure.
They are very keen because the Commander-in-Chief said so. So
100%.
So what about the suppliers? And are they ready?
Yeah, well, look, we work with the Navy, the US Navy, to test SAF on the F-18. We also worked with the Air Force on getting the C-17 transport aircraft, which, by the way, is an aircraft I know His Highness absolutely loves that aircraft, and to get that certified to fly on SAF as well. But the really, I think, great opportunity that we're seeing is around the deployment of digital products. So for example, if you can put a product on an older airframe, like a C-17, for example, that can reduce maintenance cycles by thousands of hours, you are also making a considerable impact on fewer emissions.
Yeah. Thank you very much.